I think we're going to be trademarking that or something called crawl, walk, run, and the importance of about doing that in your innovation process.
Yeah.
So Brent, we've successfully done crawl, walk, run with some of our customers. Tell us a little bit about on from your perspective, the importance of that.
Yeah, when we came out in the marketplace, we always said that the implementation doesn't have to be a bad word. There are so many vendors out there that say we're going to implement our product in a year, and then all of a sudden 2 years down the road you're still not implemented, you're still having struggles. And we said we need to make sure that when we come to the market and we say we're going to implement in 6 months, that we're implemented in 6 months. But I believe it becomes especially important when you're able to take a project like that and break it down into a crawl phase, a walk phase, a run phase. And the beautiful part about that is at the end of the crawl phase, the idea is there's some value that the carrier or the company can really truly see, feel, and get metrics on, right? And then what happens is they see that value, and all of a sudden they see excitement, and they're going, wow, this is really cool. We really can do this in this process, right? As opposed to doing this big, 24-month planning process and starting down this path, and there's no light at the end of the tunnel. And then when you finally do get to the end of the project, everybody's mad, everybody's upset or whatever. And whereas if you do this process and you break down the implementation into different phases, now we're getting some value right out of the gate, and it builds momentum, it builds excitement. People want to work on the next phase of the project, and it just has changed the way that implementations, I believe, should be done.
I absolutely agree, Brent. And from a project management perspective, and forget about project management perspective, let's talk about the culture of a
Yeah.
company. There is nothing more satisfying to when you're seeing something live in production, getting early feedback, and the ability to respond.
Yeah.
So in the previous, like how, like when we hear stories where an implementation was, luckily 2 years. We had one customer we were talking to that did a claims implementation, and it took them 2 years. And that vendor wasn't even their target market was this customer. They had just basically sold them a product, and it
Mhm.
took 2 years, very little implementation. And at the end of 2 years, that entire team is so exhausted, so tired, they don't even want to think about the word implementation because they're going to throw up.
Yeah.
How many times have you, I'm looking at carriers, how many projects can you think about that you remember and it makes you want to throw up?
Yeah.
It's a disgusting feeling, right? Because there's some projects that make you feel like that. What we've done with Benekiva is how do we create energy? How do we create excitement? And we do that very purposefully. And we recommend our carriers to take this crawl, walk, run approach. Crawl can have no integration or very minimal integration, but it solves a pain point. That's
Yeah.
the importance of crawl. It's not like, hey, let's get this new system, this new site up, and now you can do this. It's about eliminating a pain or multiple pain points with this implementation. The key with crawl is keeping it less than 2 months or
Yeah.
6 to 8 weeks is like the perfect sauce for us, because that's enough time when you put it in production. It's young enough that you can evolve it still.
Yeah.
And so if you need to make tweaks, your partner should be able to make tweaks relatively fast. And then you can get to the next phase. And the next phase can be a crawl plus before you go into walk. But it opens up the doors, and what it does, it opens up the mind of possibilities. While if you're stuck on a 2 year implementation, you tunnel vision. You cannot see, you've got so many blinders, you can't see what the possibilities are. And you may pivot. if you do crawl, walk, run, which is a good thing because you're learning from it. So I get very excited about talking about crawl, walk, run. We'll probably do like series of these because I think that's such a powerful lesson that we've learned when we implemented that way with our customers.
Mhm. Yeah, it's truly interesting when, a lot of times when we as vendors come to carriers and we share that, we've installed our system live in production from start to finish in less than 6 months. And they go, the first thing we hear is, oh, well, that can't happen here. Right. Like their carrier is so much different than everybody else's. And, it's interesting, even our latest client that we went live, they were even, a little skeptical at first with even our crawl phase, saying, how can we get through the crawl phase in less than 8 weeks and get live in production, right? And, another interesting point there was with that carrier, we said, in order to shrink this process, what we will do is we will get the teams working on the solution, right? On going to production. While in parallel, we've got teams working on contracting and getting through procurement and those items, right? So if you split those out and you do those separately, then you're probably at a 8 to 12 week process per process. So one to get the crawl phase done and one to get procurement and contracting done. Whereas we said, gosh, if we're building this long-term relationship, then why don't we have a little trust? Why don't we have a little trust to get the teams working on the production, getting ready to go live in production, while at the same time we're working on the legal side, right? Because if we have this basic understanding that we want to work together, right? Whatever comes up in contracting, we're going to work through it. We're going to figure it out, right? Then there's no reason why you can't put the teams and get them
Yeah.
working. When we suggested that to this carrier, they said, we've never had a vendor that wanted to literally start working before contracts were signed. And, I've always posed, why? I mean, if you're building, what better way to show, some a process of, we want this to be a long-term relationship, than putting a little trust, right? If we would have gone through that 8 week process and they decided not to go in production, okay, well, we lost out on that one, right? But
And
so
we
far,
learned something from it.
yeah,
Yeah.
so far, knock on wood, we haven't had one carrier that's done that.
Yeah.
Every carrier that we've gone down that path with has gone live in production and has signed a contract with Benekiva. So I think it's just, we need to, we discussed this on a previous podcast. There's those that think inside the box, those that think outside the box, and then those that think there is no box. I think in some of these new vendors, these new solutions, you just have to go into it with a mindset of, there is no box, right? There is no set process, right? Because this tier one carrier, they had never in the past done contracting and implementation in parallel, right? So now they're looking at it going, wow, look at the possibilities here, right? Because if you think about some of those vendors that they chose, some of them, I mean, it takes 6 months to get through contracting, right?
Yeah.
So that's 6 months of work that the teams could have been, getting
Doing
something productive.
momentum. It's all
Yeah.
about momentum building.
So, we were just at the mindset, gosh, there are two separate teams that work on those. Why not just task two separate teams to go work in parallel?
Yep.
So,
Well, that's our thoughts on crawl, walk, run. And thank you so much, Brent, for sharing your perspective. And until next time, we'll come back with another powerful Benekiva Minute.
see you, everyone.